Little girl returns from school with shaved head. Police officer father becomes furious and surrounds school with 30 police cars. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. Officer Frank Dawson pushed open his front door that Thursday evening and froze. There, sitting on the living room floor, was his 6-year-old daughter Ellie, her head completely shaved, covered in angry red marks, tears streaming down her face as she scratched desperately at her scalp. "Daddy," she sobbed, her small voice breaking. "It hurts so bad." Frank's world tilted. His little girl, his sunshine, looked like someone had taken everything from her. The beautiful brown curls she loved to twirl around her finger, gone. Just raw, irritated skin and a child's broken spirit. What happened? Frank dropped to his knees, his hands trembling as he tried to examine her head without touching the inflamed patches. "Baby, who did this to you?" Martha Holloway, the 72-year-old woman who'd been watching Ellie for the past 3 years, stood wringing her hands near the couch. "Frank, I swear, she came home from school like this. I picked her up at 3 o'clock and she was wearing that little pink hat, and when we got inside, she took it off and—" Martha's voice cracked. "I didn't know what to do. I called you 4 times. Frank pulled his phone from his pocket. 4 missed calls. He'd been dealing with a traffic incident across town, radio turned up, phone on silent, standard procedure. But while he'd been writing tickets, his daughter had been suffering. The school did this? Frank's voice dropped to that dangerous calm his fellow officers recognized. The kind of quiet that came before the storm. "I don't know." Martha dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "She won't tell me. She just keeps crying and scratching." Frank looked at his daughter, really looked at her. Ellie had lost her mother 4 years ago to an illness that had come too fast and taken too much. Since then, it had been just the 2 of them. Except it hadn't really been the 2 of them, had it? Frank worked 14-hour shifts, picked up extra patrols, volunteered for every overtime opportunity, anything to avoid coming home to an empty house that still smelled like his wife's perfume. Martha had been his lifeline. A kind, grandmotherly woman who lived 2 streets over, retired and alone since her own children had scattered across the country. She'd been perfect, loving, patient, always available. She'd become the closest thing to a grandmother Ellie had ever known. But looking at his daughter now, at the raw patches on her scalp, at the fear in her eyes, Frank felt something dark and protective surge through his chest. "Ellie, sweetheart." He kept his voice gentle despite the rage building inside him. "Did someone at school do this to your hair?" Ellie's bottom lip quibbled. I don't remember, Daddy. It's all fuzzy. My head was itchy at school and then, she burst into fresh tears. Frank gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of her sensitive scalp. Over her shoulder, he locked eyes with Martha. The old woman looked genuinely distressed, but something nagged at Frank's trained instincts. Something felt off about this whole situation. "I'm calling Owen," Frank said, reaching for his phone. Sergeant Owen Briggs had been his partner for 8 years. If anyone could help him figure this out, it was Owen. "Frank, maybe we should wait until morning," Martha suggested nervously. "Maybe it was just an accident at school, maybe another child." "An accident?" Frank's voice rose despite himself. "Look at her, Martha. This wasn't an accident." Ellie flinched in his arms and Frank immediately softened. "I'm sorry, baby. Daddy's not mad at you. I'm going to fix this, okay? I'm going to find out who hurt you." He stood, still cradling Ellie, and grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. His service weapon sat in the lockbox nearby. For one terrifying moment, he wanted to take it. But no, this was about answers, about justice, not revenge. "Where are you going?" Martha asked. "To Pinewood Elementary. Someone there knows what happened to my daughter, and they're going to tell me tonight." "Frank, it's almost 7 o'clock. The school's closed." "Then I'll wake someone up." Ellie clutched his shirt. "Daddy, please don't leave me again." Those words hit Frank like a physical blow. Don't leave me again. How many times had he heard that plea? How many school plays had he missed? How many bedtime stories had Martha read because he was working late? But this was different. This was about protecting her. Someone had hurt his little girl, and Frank Dawson, father first, police officer second, was going to make sure they paid for it. He set Ellie down gently on the couch. "Martha, stay with her. I'll be back in an hour." As Frank headed for the door, Ellie's small voice followed him. "Daddy, please, don't go." But he was already outside, engine roaring to life, gravel spitting from his tires as he tore down the driveway. In his rearview mirror, he could see Martha in the doorway, one hand raised as if to call him back. Frank didn't stop. Someone had hurt his daughter, and before the night was over, they were going to answer for it. What Frank didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know as he raced toward Pinewood Elementary with his jaw clenched and his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, was that the person responsible wasn't waiting at that school. They were standing in his doorway, watching him drive away. Frank barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ellie's bare scalp, those red patches, her tears. At 5:30 in the morning, he gave up trying and drove straight to Pinewood Elementary School. The parking lot was empty except for the custodian's truck. Frank pounded on the front entrance until Mr. Henderson, the elderly maintenance man, opened the door with wide, startled eyes. "Officer Dawson, school doesn't start for 2 more hours. I need to see Mrs. Callahan now. The principal won't be in until 7:30 at least. Then call her. Tell her it's an emergency." Something in Frank's voice must have convinced the old man, because he nodded quickly and disappeared into the office. Frank paced the empty hallway, his boots echoing against the linoleum. Colorful student artwork lined the walls. Happy sons, smiling families, innocent drawings from innocent children. One of those children had hurt his daughter, or worse, one of the adults responsible for protecting them had. Mrs. Callahan arrived 40 minutes later, her hair still damp from a rushed shower, concern etched across her face. "Officer Dawson, what's happened? Is there an emergency? My daughter came home yesterday with her head shaved, completely bald, covered in marks." The principal's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, is she all right?" "No, she's not all right. Someone at this school hurt her and I want to know who." Mrs. Callahan's expression shifted from shock to confusion. "Frank, I don't understand. We would never, no one here would ever harm a student. Are you certain it happened at school? She was fine when Martha dropped her off. She came home like this." By now, Sergeant Owen Briggs had arrived, responding to Frank's 6 a.m. call. Owen was a steady presence, the kind of cop who thought before he acted. Everything Frank wasn't being right now. "Frank, maybe we should slow down," Owen said carefully. "Talk to the teachers, check the security footage before we jump to conclusions." "Jump to conclusions?" Frank turned on his partner. "My 6-year-old daughter's head was shaved, Owen. That's not a conclusion, that's a fact." Mrs. Callahan straightened her shoulders. "Officer Dawson, I understand you're upset, but I assure you, nothing like this happened at Pinewood Elementary. We have strict supervision protocols. If you'd like to review our security cameras, you're welcome to, but you won't find anything because nothing happened here." "Then where did it happen?" Frank's voice cracked. "Where was my daughter hurt?" "I don't know," Mrs. Callahan said softly, "but I promise you, not here." At 8 o'clock, Captain Dale Morrison, the county sheriff, arrived at the school. He'd been Frank's boss for 10 years and knew him well enough to recognize when his officer was running on emotion rather than evidence. "Frank, let's talk outside." They stood in the parking lot while early morning teachers began arriving, casting curious glances their way. "I want a full investigation," Frank said before Morrison could speak. "Security footage, interviews with every staff member, background checks." "Frank, stop!" Morrison held up a hand. "I'll authorize a preliminary investigation because you're one of my best officers and I trust your instincts. But I'm giving you 72 hours to find concrete evidence. If after 3 days there's nothing pointing to the school, this case gets closed. And Frank?" Morrison's expression hardened. "If you're wrong about this, the school board will come after you for defamation. They'll sue you, they'll drag your name through the mud, and I won't be able to protect you." Frank's jaw tightened. "I'm not wrong. You have 72 hours, don't waste them." By noon, the story had spread through Ashford Creek like wildfire. The local newspaper, the Ashford Creek Herald, ran an afternoon edition with the headline blazing across the front page. Local officer accuses elementary school of child endangerment. Investigation underway. Frank returned home to find Martha sitting with Ellie at the kitchen table, helping her with a coloring book. When Martha saw him, she stood quickly. "Frank, I've been thinking about yesterday. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe another child was playing with scissors. An accident." Frank kept his voice low, conscious of Ellie coloring nearby. "Martha, you were there when she came home. You saw her. Does that look like an accident to you?" Martha's hands trembled. "I just think maybe we should consider all possibilities before what? Before I protect my daughter?" Frank ran a hand through his hair. "You were supposed to watch her, Martha. You were supposed to keep her safe." The old woman's face crumpled. "I did. Frank, I love that little girl like she's my own granddaughter. I would never let anything happen to her." "But something did happen." Frank's voice rose despite himself. "She left this house fine and came back." He stopped, noticing Ellie had put down her crayon and was watching them with frightened eyes. Martha gathered her purse with shaking hands. Maybe you should find someone else to watch Ellie for a while, until this is all sorted out." Frank wanted to argue, but part of him, the suspicious trained investigator part, wondered if that was exactly what needed to happen. "Maybe that's best," he said quietly. As Martha left, she paused at the door. "Frank, I hope you find who did this. I really do. But please, don't let this destroy the good people at that school if they're innocent." After she was gone, Frank sat down next to Ellie. She climbed into his lap without a word, and they stayed that way for a long time. 72 hours. 3 days to find the truth. The clock was ticking. 48 hours remaining. By Friday morning, Ashford Creek was in chaos. Parents flooded the school office, demanding answers. Some pulled their children out of classes entirely. Local news vans parked outside Pinewood Elementary, reporters interviewing worried mothers on camera. Frank sat in the school's security office, reviewing footage from Thursday on a grainy monitor. Owen stood beside him, arms crossed. "There," Frank pointed. 7:45 a.m., that's Ellie getting dropped off. On screen, Martha's old sedan pulled up to the drop-off zone. Ellie climbed out wearing her favorite purple backpack and a pink knit hat pulled low over her head. "She's already wearing the hat," Owen observed. "So whatever happened to her hair occurred before school." Frank's stomach tightened. "Keep watching." They fast-forwarded through the day. Ellie appeared in various hallways, the playground, the cafeteria, always with the hat on. At 3 o'clock, Martha picked her up. Ellie climbed into the car, still wearing the hat. "Nothing," Owen said. "Frank, there's no footage of anyone touching her inappropriately. No confrontations, no incidents in the bathrooms. The school's clean." "Then where did it happen?" Frank's voice was strained. Owen put a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe you need to ask Martha more questions." Frank didn't want to hear it, but the evidence, or lack of it, was speaking clearly. 2 teachers had been suspended because of his accusations. Parents were terrified. The whole town was watching, and he had nothing. He drove home feeling hollow. Ellie was at a neighbor's house, playing with their daughter under supervision. The house was empty and quiet. Frank walked through it like a detective, seeing his own home with new eyes. He started in Ellie's bathroom. Her little mermaid toothbrush sat in a cup, her strawberry shampoo on the edge of the tub, and there, pushed to the back of the cabinet, a prescription bottle. Frank pulled it out. The label read, "Ellie Dawson, medicated shampoo. Used daily for scalp condition. Prescribed by Dr. Harrison Greaves." The date was 3 months ago. Frank opened the bottle. It was completely full, never used. His hands started shaking. Martha bathed Ellie every night. She was supposed to use this medication. Why hadn't she? Why was the bottle still full? Frank pulled out his phone and called Dr. Greaves's office. The receptionist put him through immediately when he identified himself as Ellie's father. "Mr. Dawson, is everything all right with Ellie?" "Doctor, you prescribed a medicated shampoo 3 months ago. What was it for?" A pause. Ellie was developing some irritation on her scalp. Small patches where the hair was thinning. I wanted to treat it before it got worse. Did the medication not help? It was never used, Frank said quietly. Another pause, longer this time. Never used. But we scheduled follow-up appointments to monitor her progress. What appointments? 3 appointments over the past 2 months. They were all canceled. I assumed Martha Holloway called each time saying Ellie was improving and didn't need to come in. Frank sat down heavily on the edge of the bathtub. Martha canceled the appointments. Yes, she said you were both very busy and that Ellie's condition had cleared up. I took her at her word. After hanging up, Frank sat there holding the full bottle of medicine that should have been empty. The medicine that might have prevented whatever had happened to his daughter's hair. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Officer Dawson? A woman's voice, hushed and nervous. You're looking in the wrong place. Who is this? The school didn't hurt your daughter. Look closer to home. The line went dead. Frank tried calling back. The number was blocked. He stood in the bathroom, the unused medicine in one hand, his phone in the other, and felt the ground shift beneath his feet. For 48 hours, he'd been so certain the enemy was out there. At the school, among strangers, somewhere he could fight. But what if the voice was right? What if he'd been looking in the wrong place all along? Frank walked to Ellie's bedroom and sat on her small bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and princess posters. On her nightstand was a framed photo of her and Martha, taken at the park last summer. They were both laughing, Ellie's brown curls blowing in the wind. Those curls were gone now, and Frank was starting to realize he might not like the truth when he found it. Frank couldn't stop thinking about that anonymous phone call. Look closer to home. The words echoed in his mind all through Friday night and into Saturday morning. He tried tracing the call, nothing. The number was completely blocked, untraceable. Whoever had called him knew something. But who? And why wouldn't they just tell him directly? By Saturday afternoon, Frank realized the magnitude of what he'd set in motion. This wasn't just about finding out what happened to Ellie anymore. An entire community was in turmoil. 2 innocent teachers were suspended, their reputations damaged. Parents were scared. The school board was threatening legal action. And he still had no real answers. Frank drove back to Pinewood Elementary and watched the security footage again, this time with fresh eyes. Ellie entered the building at 7:45 wearing that pink hat. She never took it off all day. She left at 3 o'clock still wearing it. Whatever happened to her hair didn't happen at school. The evidence was clear. Owen found him there, staring at the paused screen. You need to go home, Frank. Talk to Martha. Really talk to her. Frank drove home slowly, dreading the conversation. He found Martha in the kitchen making Ellie a sandwich. His daughter was in the living room watching cartoons. A colorful scarf wrapped around her head today, instead of the hat. Martha, we need to talk. The old woman's hands trembled slightly as she set down the knife. Of course. They sat at the kitchen table while Ellie remained occupied in the other room. Tell me about Ellie's hair, Frank said gently. Not what happened Thursday, before that. Had you noticed anything different? Martha's eyes grew distant. Well, she'd been scratching her head a lot. For weeks, actually. I thought maybe it was lice like some of the other children at school get. Weeks? Frank felt his chest tighten. Why didn't you tell me? Martha looked genuinely confused. Didn't I? I thought I mentioned it to you, maybe I forgot. She rubbed her temples. I've been so forgetful lately. Frank pulled out his phone and showed her the prescription bottle photo. This medicine. Dr. Greaves prescribed it 3 months ago. Why wasn't it used? Martha stared at the photo. I gave Ellie her baths. I used everything the doctor said to use. But the bottle is full, Martha. Completely full. That can't be right. Martha stood up, agitated. I used it. Every night. I think I remember. Frank watched her carefully. Something was wrong. This wasn't defensiveness or lying. This was genuine confusion. Martha, Dr. Greaves had 3 follow-up appointments scheduled for Ellie. You canceled all of them. I did. Martha sat back down heavily. Why would I do that? The doctor's office said you told them Ellie was better and didn't need to come in. Martha's face went pale. I don't remember calling them. Frank felt a chill run through him. He'd been so focused on blaming someone, the school, a stranger, anyone, that he'd missed what was right in front of him. Martha, have you been feeling okay? Forgetting things? I'm 72 years old, Frank. Everyone forgets things at my age. But her voice was shaky. From the living room, Ellie called out, I'm hungry. Martha stood up automatically. Coming, Emma. Frank froze. Martha. Her name is Ellie. Martha blinked, looking disoriented. What? Of course it is, Ellie, I know that. She laughed nervously. Silly me. I don't know why I said Emma. But Frank did. Emma was Martha's own daughter, the one who lived in California and never called. The one who, according to Martha's own stories, she hadn't seen in over 2 years. Martha walked toward the living room, but Frank caught her arm gently. Martha, when was the last time you saw a doctor? For yourself? I don't need doctors, she said quietly. I'm fine, just a little tired sometimes. She pulled away and went to give Ellie her sandwich. Frank watched her move through his kitchen, this woman who'd been like a grandmother to his daughter, who'd filled the void left by loss. And he realized with growing horror that something was very, very wrong. The school wasn't the problem. The mystery wasn't out there in the world. It was here, in his own home, in the woman he'd trusted with his daughter's life. But what exactly was wrong? And how long had it been happening? Sunday morning arrived with dark clouds threatening rain. Frank had barely slept again. He found Martha in the kitchen early making breakfast. We need to talk about those appointments, Frank said, trying to keep his voice steady. Why did you cancel them, Martha? She cracked eggs into a pan, her movements slow and uncertain. The doctor said it wasn't urgent, Frank. I didn't want to bother you. You're always so busy with work. Ellie's health is never a bother. I know that. Martha's hands shook as she stirred the eggs. I thought I was helping, taking care of things so you wouldn't have to worry. Frank wanted to be angry, but looking at Martha's trembling hands, her confused expression, he felt something else. Fear. Have you been taking your own medications? He asked gently. Of course I have. But she didn't meet his eyes. Before Frank could press further, his police radio crackled to life. Robbery in progress at the Gas and Go on Highway 52. All units respond. Frank hesitated. He was off duty. Someone else could handle it. But habit pulled at him. That instinct to serve, to act, to be anywhere but here, dealing with complicated emotions. I have to go, he said, grabbing his keys. Martha nodded, looking almost relieved. Frank was halfway out the door when Ellie appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in her favorite blanket. Daddy, where are you going? Just work, sweetheart. I'll be back soon. You always say that. Her small voice cut through him. I promise, baby. 1 hour, maybe 2. He left before he could see the disappointment in her eyes. The robbery call turned into a 3-hour ordeal. Witnesses to interview, reports to file, evidence to process. When Frank finally got home, it was past dinner time. The house was dark except for one lamp in the living room. Ellie was asleep on the couch, still in her daytime clothes. Martha dozed in the armchair nearby, her reading glasses askew on her face. Frank knelt beside his daughter, gently touching her shoulder. Ellie, honey, let's get you to bed. Her eyes opened and for a moment she just stared at him. Then her lip trembled. You promised. I know, I'm sorry, there was an emergency. There's always an emergency. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Daddy, do you even love me anymore? The question hit Frank like a physical blow. What? Of course I love you. Ellie, you're everything to me. Then why are you always leaving? She pulled away from him. Mommy left and never came back. Now you're leaving too. Frank gathered her into his arms despite her resistance. I'm not leaving you, sweetheart. I'm right here. No, you're not, she whispered. You're never here. Martha woke up with a start. Oh, Frank, you're home. I must have dozed off. Did Ellie eat dinner? Frank looked at Martha. Did she? Martha's face went blank. I think so. We had... What did we have? She looked around the kitchen as if it might hold the answer. Frank carried Ellie upstairs to bed. She was quiet now, curled against his chest like when she was a toddler. He tucked her in and sat on the edge of her bed. "I'm going to do better," he said softly. "I promise." But Ellie had already turned away from him, facing the wall. Downstairs, Martha had gathered her purse. "I should go home. It's late." "Martha, wait, we still need to—" "Tomorrow, Frank. I'm very tired tonight." She left before he could stop her. Frank stood alone in his quiet house. Through Ellie's baby monitor, still plugged in from years ago, he heard her crying softly into her pillow. He sank onto the couch and put his head in his hands. 24 hours left to find evidence against the school. But increasingly, Frank wondered if he was chasing the wrong answer to the wrong question. The real problem wasn't at Pinewood Elementary. It wasn't even Martha. Not entirely. The problem was him. A father too broken by grief to be present. A man hiding behind his badge to avoid being a dad. And while he'd been hiding, his daughter had been hurting. Right under his roof. Monday morning, Frank did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He called Captain Morrison and requested emergency leave. "Take the week," Morrison said. "Use it to get your head straight, Frank." For the first time in months, Frank woke Ellie up himself, made her breakfast himself, and sat with her while she ate her cereal. "No work today?" Ellie asked cautiously. "No work today," Frank confirmed. "Just you and me, kiddo." A small smile appeared on her face, the first real smile he'd seen since Thursday. After breakfast, Frank said, "How about a bath? We need to wash your hair. Your head." Gently. Ellie nodded. They went upstairs together. Frank ran the water, testing the temperature like he used to when she was small. It felt strange, unfamiliar. How had he forgotten how to do this? "Okay, where's that special shampoo Dr. Greaves prescribed?" He searched the bathroom cabinet. Children's shampoo, conditioner, bubble bath, but no medicated shampoo. "Martha usually keeps it by the sink," Ellie offered. Frank checked. Nothing. He searched the whole bathroom. Gone. When Martha arrived later that morning, Frank had asked her to come help with the transition. He asked directly, "Where's Ellie's medicated shampoo?" "Oh, we used it all up weeks ago," Martha said easily. "I meant to ask you to get a refill." Frank felt his pulse quicken. "You used it all?" "Every night, just like the doctor said." But Frank had found that bottle 3 days ago. It had been completely full. He'd photographed it, held it in his hands. Unless there were 2 bottles. "Martha, wait here with Ellie. I need to check something." He went downstairs to his car where he'd left his phone. He pulled up the photo he'd taken. There it was. Full bottle. Prescription label clear. Frank walked to Martha's house 2 streets over. She'd given him a spare key years ago for emergencies. He let himself in, feeling guilty but determined. Her bathroom was neat, organized. He opened the medicine cabinet. Aspirin, vitamins, blood pressure medication. All expired, some by months. Behind an old box of bandages pushed to the very back, Frank found it. The medicated shampoo bottle. Still full, still sealed, hidden. Frank sat on the edge of Martha's bathtub holding the bottle. She'd said they used it all. She genuinely believed they had. But here it was, never opened. Hidden away like a secret she'd forgotten she was keeping. He looked around the bathroom with new eyes. On the counter sat a pillbox organizer labeled with days of the week. Frank opened Monday, empty, Tuesday, empty, every day empty. On a notepad by the sink, Martha had written, "Give Ellie bath, 7 p.m., medicine and hair. Remember." The handwriting grew shakier with each word. Below it, she'd written the same thing again, and again. 4 times on the same page, each time as if writing it for the first time. Frank's hands trembled. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't cruelty. This was something else entirely. He returned to his house, the bottle in his pocket. Martha was reading a story to Ellie on the couch. "Martha, can we talk? In the kitchen?" Once alone, Frank placed the bottle on the table between them. "I found this, in your bathroom. Hidden behind the bandages." Martha stared at it, her face draining of color. "But I used it. I remember using it. Do you? Frank asked gently. Or do you remember meaning to use it? Martha's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. I was so sure. When's the last time you took your own medications? Frank asked. Martha looked at the bottle, at her hands, at nothing. I take them every day. Your pillbox is empty, Martha. All 7 days. That can't be right. But her voice was barely a whisper. Frank reached across and took her hand. It felt fragile, papery. Martha, I think you need to see a doctor. Not for Ellie. For you. I'm fine, she insisted. But tears were streaming down her face now. I'm just tired and forgetful. Everyone my age is forgetful. Not like this, Frank said softly. The deadline was slipping away. In hours, Captain Morrison would close the investigation. The school would be cleared. But Frank didn't care about that anymore. He cared about the truth, and the truth was emerging like something dark rising from deep water. Monday afternoon, Captain Morrison called. The investigation's over, Frank. We found nothing at the school. The security footage is clear. Ellie was already wearing that hat when she arrived. Whatever happened to her hair didn't happen at Pinewood Elementary. Frank stood at his kitchen window, phone pressed to his ear. I know. The school board has scheduled a public hearing for 6 o'clock tonight. They're pressing charges for defamation and harassment. Frank, you need to prepare yourself. This could cost you everything. At 5:30, Frank's doorbell rang. He opened it to find a plain manila envelope on his doorstep. No name. No return address. Inside was a single note in printed letters. Ask your babysitter what she did Tuesday night. Check the downstairs bathroom trash can. Frank's blood ran cold. Tuesday night, the night before Ellie came home with her head shaved. He walked to the downstairs bathroom, the one Ellie used. He opened the trash can. Beneath tissues and cotton swabs, he found them. Locks of brown hair. Ellie's beautiful brown curls, cut unevenly, desperately, like someone had tried to fix something and made it worse. Frank's legs nearly gave out. He sank onto the edge of the bathtub, staring at his daughter's hair in his shaking hands. Someone had cut Ellie's hair here. In this house, then tried to hide the evidence. He heard Martha's voice from the living room, reading to Ellie, that gentle, grandmotherly voice he'd trusted for 3 years. Frank stood slowly and walked to the doorway. Martha sat on the couch with Ellie curled beside her, completely absorbed in the storybook. Martha, can Ellie go play in her room for a minute? Something in his tone made Ellie look up nervously. Daddy? It's okay, sweetheart. Just for a few minutes. Once Ellie was upstairs, Frank closed the living room door and turned to Martha. I found something in the bathroom trash. He showed her the locks of hair. Martha's face went white. Where did those come from? You tell me. They were in our trash can, Ellie's hair. I don't. Martha stood up, backing away. I don't understand. Tuesday night, Martha. What happened Tuesday night? Tuesday? Martha's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. We had dinner. Spaghetti, Ellie's favorite, then what? I gave her a bath. Martha's voice rose defensively. I always give her a bath. Frank stepped closer. And what happened during the bath? Nothing. I washed her hair, Martha stopped abruptly, her face crumbling. There were patches, bare patches where her hair was falling out. I didn't know what to do. I thought if I evened it out, made it look neater. You cut her hair, Frank said quietly. Just a little. Martha was crying now. Just to make the patches less noticeable. But it looked worse, so I tried to fix it, and it kept looking worse, and She sank back onto the couch. I panicked. I thought if I shaved it all off, it would grow back evenly, clean, better. The room spun around, Frank. You shaved our daughter's head. I was trying to help, Martha sobbed. I didn't know what else to do. The patches were getting bigger and I'd forgotten to use the medicine, and I'd canceled those appointments. And I thought, if I could just fix it myself, you'd never have to know I'd messed up. You let me accuse the school. Frank's voice was hollow. You let me destroy those teachers' reputations. You sat there and said nothing while I tore apart an entire community. I didn't mean to. I was confused. I thought, maybe it did happen at school. Maybe I remembered wrong. I can't. Martha put her hands over her face. I can't trust my own memory anymore, Frank. I don't know what's real. Frank looked at this woman, this kind, loving woman who'd cared for his daughter, and he saw something that terrified him more than any criminal he'd ever faced. He saw someone who was losing herself, someone who'd hurt Ellie not from malice, but from confusion so deep she couldn't tell truth from fiction anymore. "Oh God," Frank whispered. "What have I done?" The clock on the wall read 5:55. In 5 minutes he had to face that hearing, face the whole town, and admit he'd been wrong about everything. Frank couldn't go to that hearing, not yet, not without understanding the full truth. He called Captain Morrison. "I need 2 more hours. Frank, the board won't wait. Please, Dale, 2 hours, I'm begging you." A long pause. 2 hours. That's all I can give you. Frank turned to Martha, who was still crying on his couch. "Martha, I need to see your house, all of it. Will you let me?" She nodded, too defeated to argue. Martha stayed with Ellie while Frank drove to her small cottage. He'd been here dozens of times for coffee, for pickup and drop-off, but he'd never really looked. Not like this. He started in her bedroom. On the nightstand sat a framed photo of 3 adults, Martha's children, David, Rebecca, and Tom. They were smiling, arms around each other from some holiday years ago. Frank opened the drawer beneath the photo. Inside, he found letters, dozens of them, all addressed to her children, none of them sent. He picked up the most recent one, dated 6 months ago. "Dear David, Rebecca, and Tom, I need to tell you something. I'm forgetting things, important things. Yesterday, I couldn't remember if I'd locked the front door, so I checked 7 times. Last week, I got lost driving to the grocery store, the same store I've been going to for 20 years. I'm scared. Please call me. Please come visit. I don't know what's happening to me. Love, Mom." The letter sat in an unsealed envelope, a stamp affixed, address written clearly, ready to mail, but never mailed, because Martha had forgotten. Frank found more evidence throughout the house. A calendar where she'd written the same appointment 3 times, each time apparently forgetting she'd already written it. Notes on the refrigerator. Turn off stove. Check twice. Lock door before bed. Remember. Ellie's medicine. Important. In the bathroom cabinet, he found her own medications, blood pressure pills, vitamins, all expired, bottles still full. And then, in a shoebox under her bed, Frank found something that broke his heart. A small notebook labeled Memory Journal. He opened it and read entries in Martha's handwriting. January 10th. I forgot Tom's birthday. He's 42 now. I think. Or is it 43? I used to know everything about my children. Now I can't remember. February 3rd. I called Ellie Emma again today. Emma is Rebecca's daughter, my granddaughter I haven't seen in 2 years. Why do I keep mixing them up? March 15th. I'm writing everything down now because I can't trust my mind. Frank trusts me with Ellie. I can't let him down. I can't tell him I'm struggling. He'll take her away, and I'll be alone again. The last entry was from 2 weeks ago. I found patches on Ellie's scalp, bald patches. I know there was medicine. I know there were appointments, but I can't remember if I used the medicine or went to the appointments. I'm so scared. What if I hurt her by forgetting? What if I'm not enough anymore? Frank sat on Martha's bed, surrounded by evidence of a woman desperately trying to hold on to herself while slipping away piece by piece. She hadn't hidden Ellie's condition out of malice. She'd hidden her own condition out of fear. Fear of being useless. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of being alone. He called Martha's daughter Rebecca. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. He tried David. Same thing. Tom answered on the 4th ring. Hello? Tom, this is Frank Dawson. I watch your mother's house sometimes. We need to talk about Martha. Look, I don't know what she's told you, but she's sick, Frank interrupted. Really sick, and she needs help. A long silence. Then, that's not my problem anymore. She chose to spend her time raising other people's kids instead of being there for us. She made her choice. The line went dead. Frank stared at the phone, rage and sadness warring inside him. Martha had spent 3 years loving his daughter like her own, while her own children had abandoned her. And when she'd needed them most, they hadn't been there, just like he hadn't been there for Ellie. Frank made a decision then. He couldn't undo what he'd done to the school. He couldn't fix Martha's mind, but he could do the right thing from this moment forward. He drove back to his house, sat down with Martha, and said gently, "We're going to that hearing together, and we're going to tell the truth, all of it." The Ashford Creek Community Center was packed, every seat filled. Cameras from 3 local news stations lined the back wall. Frank walked in with Martha beside him, and the room went silent. Mrs. Callahan sat at a long table with the school board members, her eyes red from crying. The 2 suspended teachers sat behind her, their faces hollow. Frank approached the microphone. His hands were shaking. "I owe everyone here an apology," he began. His voice cracked. "The school did nothing wrong. Your teachers did nothing wrong. I accused innocent people because I was desperate to blame someone, anyone, except the person who actually needed help." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My daughter was hurt, but not by Pinewood Elementary. Frank looked at Martha, who was crying silently beside him. She was hurt by someone who loved her, someone who was sick and didn't know how to ask for help. He explained it all. The forgotten medications, the canceled appointments, the patches of hair that Martha had tried to fix, making it worse, the confusion, the memory loss, the desperation. Martha Holloway is suffering from a medical condition that affects her memory and judgment. She didn't hurt my daughter intentionally. She was trying to help but couldn't remember how. The room erupted, parents shouting questions, reporters surging forward. Sheriff Morrison had to call for order. Mrs. Callahan stood slowly. "Officer Dawson, my teachers were suspended. Our school's reputation was destroyed." Parents pulled their children out. "And you're telling us it was all because you didn't notice your own babysitter was sick?" The words hit like a slap, because they were true. "I'm sorry," Frank said. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this." A parent stood up, pointing at him. "My kid has nightmares now because you made us think there was a predator at school." Others joined in. The anger Frank had directed at the school was now pointed straight back at him. Captain Morrison stepped forward. "Officer Dawson, effective immediately. You're on administrative leave pending investigation into your conduct." Frank nodded. He'd expected that. But then Dr. Patel, a neurologist from County General, approached Martha. "Mrs. Holloway, I need you to come with me for evaluation. Based on what I've heard tonight, you need immediate medical attention." "No!" Martha grabbed Frank's arm. "Please, I don't want to go to a hospital." "It's for your safety," Dr. Patel said gently. "And for Ellie's." "Martha," Frank said softly, "you need help. Real help." 2 paramedics appeared with a wheelchair. Martha looked at Frank with such betrayal in her eyes. "You're sending me away?" "I'm getting you help," Frank said, tears streaming down his face. "I should have done it sooner." As they wheeled Martha out, she looked back at him. "Tell Ellie I love her. Tell her I didn't mean to. I didn't mean—" The doors closed. She was gone. Frank stood in front of the hostile crowd, his badge about to be taken, his reputation in ruins, the woman who'd helped raise his daughter taken away in an ambulance. When he got home, Ellie was waiting with the neighbor who'd been watching her. "Where's Grandma Martha?" Ellie asked. "She had to go to the hospital, sweetie. She's sick." "Is she coming back?" Frank knelt down, looking into his daughter's scared eyes. "I don't know." Ellie's face crumpled. "First Mommy left. Then you're always gone. Now Grandma Martha's gone too." Her small voice broke. "Everyone leaves me." Frank tried to hold her, but she pushed him away and ran upstairs. He heard her bedroom door slam. He stood alone in his living room. No job, no respect, no allies. His daughter hated him, the town hated him, and he deserved every bit of it. This was rock bottom, and Frank had no idea how to climb back up. 2 days passed, 2 days of silence. Ellie barely spoke to him. Frank didn't go to work. He had no work to go to. He just existed, going through the motions of making meals, doing laundry, trying to be a father to a daughter who wouldn't look at him. Wednesday afternoon, Dr. Patel called. "Mr. Dawson, can you come to County General? We have Martha's test results, and I'd like Ellie to be examined too." An hour later, Frank sat in Dr. Patel's office while a nurse took Ellie to pediatrics. "Martha has vascular dementia," Dr. Patel said gently. "It's been progressing for at least 8 to 10 months. It affects memory, judgment, and executive function." Frank's throat tightened. "Can it be treated?" "We can slow its progression, but we can't reverse the damage already done. She'll need specialized care, Mr. Dawson. Memory care facility. She can't live independently anymore." So when she forgot to give Ellie the medicine, she likely didn't remember there was medicine to give. When she canceled those appointments, she probably forgot why they were important. And when she saw those patches on Ellie's scalp, Dr. Patel paused. She was trying to fix something but couldn't remember how. Her judgment was impaired. It wasn't cruel. It was confused. Frank put his head in his hands. "I should have noticed." Most families don't notice until there's a crisis. Patients in early stages become very good at hiding symptoms. A pediatric specialist, Dr. Chen, entered with Ellie. "Mr. Dawson, your daughter has alopecia areata. It's an autoimmune condition where the body attacks hair follicles. It's not life-threatening, but it does require consistent treatment. The patches would have been treatable if caught early. The prescribed medication would have helped significantly. But without treatment, they spread. Someone tried to cut the hair to hide the patches, which made it worse. Eventually, all the hair was shaved off." "Will it grow back?" Frank asked, his voice breaking. "With proper treatment, yes. We'll start today." Dr. Chen smiled at Ellie. "You're going to be just fine, sweetheart." After the doctors left, Frank knelt in front of his daughter. "Ellie, I'm so sorry. I wasn't there when you needed me." "You're here now," she said quietly. "I am, and I'm not leaving again. Whatever it takes, I'm staying." For the first time in days, Ellie wrapped her arms around his neck. Frank held her close, and something inside him shifted. He'd spent 3 years running from grief, hiding behind his badge, letting others raise his daughter. No more. He couldn't fix Martha's mind. He couldn't undo the damage to the school. But he could start being the father Ellie deserved. Starting right now. Thursday morning, Frank did something he'd never done before. He called a press conference. Every local reporter who'd covered the school scandal showed up. Frank stood on the steps of Ashford Creek Community Center with Ellie by his side. "I'm here to tell the truth," he began. "Martha Holloway has been diagnosed with vascular dementia. She didn't harm my daughter out of malice. She was sick and didn't know it. And I was too absent to notice." He explained everything. The missed appointments, the forgotten medications, Martha's desperate attempt to hide her declining condition because she was terrified of being alone. "I accused innocent people because I couldn't face the truth. My daughter suffered because I worked 14-hour days to avoid my own grief. Martha suffered because her children abandoned her, and she was too proud to ask for help." Frank's voice broke. "I'm asking this community for help now. Martha needs medical care she can't afford. There must be others like her. Elderly people caring for children while struggling with their own health. We failed Martha. Let's not fail anyone else." After the camera stopped rolling, 3 people approached. Mrs. Callahan, the school principal, came first. Frank braced himself for anger. Instead, she held out her hand. "What you did was wrong, Frank. But owning it takes courage. Let's figure out how to help Martha together." A woman in scrubs introduced herself. "I'm Nina Torres, a social worker at County General. We have programs for dementia patients. Let me help you navigate Martha's care." Finally, a lawyer named Marcus Webb stepped forward. "I do pro bono work for medical cases. Martha needs someone to help arrange her care, her finances, legal guardianship. I'll do it for free." Frank felt tears streaming down his face. "Why would you help me after what I did?" Mrs. Callahan squeezed his shoulder. "Because you're trying to make it right. That matters." That afternoon, they formed a plan. Nina would coordinate Martha's transfer to Greenfield Assisted Living's Memory Care Unit. Marcus would handle the legal paperwork. Mrs. Callahan would help organize a community fundraiser to cover Martha's medical expenses. And Frank would be there. For Martha, for Ellie, for everyone he'd let down. There's one more thing, Frank said to the group. Martha's children need to know what's happening. They have a right to know their mother is sick. Even after they abandoned her? Nina asked gently. Especially then. Maybe they didn't understand. Maybe they need a second chance too. That evening, Frank wrote 3 letters, one to each of Martha's children, explaining everything. He mailed them before he could change his mind. Ellie watched him from the doorway. Are you scared, Daddy? Terrified, Frank admitted. But doing the right thing is usually scary. She climbed into his lap. Grandma Martha always said brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway. Frank held his daughter close. Tomorrow they'd visit Martha in the hospital. They'd face whatever came next. Together. Friday afternoon, Dr. Patel called Frank into his office. Martha's evaluation is complete. She needs full-time memory care, Mr. Dawson. She can't live alone anymore, and caring for a child it's not safe. Frank had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud felt like a punch to the chest. So she can never come home? Greenfield Assisted Living has an excellent memory care program. She'll be safe there, cared for. But no, she can't return to independent living. How do I tell Ellie? Honestly, children understand more than we give them credit for. That evening, Frank sat Ellie down on the couch. Sweetheart, we need to talk about Grandma Martha. Ellie's eyes filled with tears immediately. She's not getting better, is she? No, baby. The sickness in her brain. The doctors can help slow it down, but they can't fix it. And she needs to live somewhere with nurses and doctors who can watch her all the time. But I love her, Ellie sobbed. Why can't she stay with us? Frank pulled her close. Because loving someone sometimes means doing what's best for them, even when it hurts us. Who's going to take care of me? Frank lifted her chin gently. I am. From now on, it's me. I promise. You promised before, Ellie whispered. Then you left. I know, and I was wrong. But I'm different now. You're going to see that. The next day, they went to the hospital to say goodbye before Martha's transfer to Greenfield. Martha sat in a wheelchair by the window, looking small and confused. Hi, Grandma Martha, Ellie said softly, climbing into her lap. Martha's face brightened. Oh, hello, sweetie. What's your name? Ellie's lip trembled. It's Ellie, remember? I'm Ellie. Martha stroked her hair gently. Ellie, that's such a pretty name. Ellie pulled out a drawing from her backpack, a picture of 3 people holding hands. I made this for you, that's me, that's Daddy, and that's you, so you don't forget us. Martha studied the picture, tears sliding down her wrinkled cheeks. I could never forget you, sweetheart, never. But her eyes were already clouding over, memory slipping away like water through fingers. Frank watched his daughter hug the woman who'd been more of a mother to her than a babysitter, and he felt his heart breaking. This was the cost of his absence. This was the price of hiding from grief. Martha was losing herself. Ellie was losing her grandmother. And it was his fault for not seeing it sooner. We'll visit you all the time, Ellie promised. Every week. I'll bring you flowers and sing you songs. That sounds wonderful, Martha said, though Frank could see she was already forgetting the conversation. The transport van arrived to take Martha to Greenfield. As they wheeled her away, she looked back one last time. Tell Emma I love her, she said to Frank. It's Ellie, Frank said gently. And she loves you too. The doors closed. Martha was gone. Frank and Ellie walked to the car in silence. When they got home, the house felt emptier than ever. Daddy, Ellie whispered. Everyone I love goes away. Frank knelt down, taking her small hands in his. I'm not going anywhere, Ellie. I'm staying right here, I promise you that. And this time he meant it with everything he had. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of a new normal. Frank had been officially suspended without pay pending an internal investigation. Money was tight, but he didn't care. He'd spent 4 years chasing overtime. Now he was chasing moments. He walked Ellie to school every morning, picked her up every afternoon. They made dinner together, badly at first, burning pasta and oversalting soup, but they laughed through it. Ellie's hair was growing back. Tiny sprouts of brown fuzz covered her scalp, soft as duck down. She wore colorful scarves that Mrs. Callahan had bought her, a different one each day. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Frank and Ellie visited Martha at Greenfield Assisted Living. Some days were good. Martha would see them coming and smile, saying, "Oh, Frank. Little Ellie. How wonderful." She'd remember their names, tell stories about when Ellie was smaller. Other days weren't good. Martha would look at them like strangers, polite but distant, asking who they were and why they were there. But Ellie never wavered. Every visit she brought flowers. Every visit she sang "You Are My Sunshine," the song Martha used to sing to her before bed. Tonight was different. Tomorrow was Martha's 73rd birthday. Ellie had been planning for days. "We need cake," Ellie said seriously, making a list with crayon. "And balloons, blue ones. Grandma Martha likes blue." Frank helped her bake a small chocolate cake, Martha's favorite. They decorated it together, Ellie's tongue poking out in concentration as she piped frosting flowers. "Daddy?" Ellie looked up. "Do you think Grandma Martha will remember it's her birthday tomorrow?" Frank set down the spatula and knelt beside her. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe yes, maybe no. What if she doesn't remember me? Then we'll remind her, gently, and we'll love her just the same." Ellie nodded slowly, then asked the question that had been haunting them both. Will she ever get better? Frank had promised himself he'd always be honest with her. "No, baby. This kind of sickness doesn't get better. It gets harder." "Then why do we keep visiting?" "Because even when her mind forgets, her heart remembers. And because showing up for people we love, especially when it's hard, that's what family does." "But we're not really family," Ellie said softly. "She's not my grandma. Not really." Frank pulled her close. "Family isn't just blood, Ellie. It's the people who show up, who care, who stay. Martha was more of a grandmother to you than most people get. And even though she's sick, even though it hurts, we keep showing up. That's what love means." Ellie was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I miss how she used to be." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." That night, Frank tucked Ellie into bed. They'd practiced "You Are My Sunshine" 3 times, getting it perfect for tomorrow. "Daddy," Ellie said as he turned off the light, "I'm proud of you." Frank's throat tightened. "Why's that?" "You stopped running away. You came home." 4 simple words. You came home. Frank sat on the edge of her bed in the darkness. "I'm sorry it took me so long." "That's okay. You're here now. That's what matters." After she fell asleep, Frank sat in the living room with Martha's memory journal, the one he'd found in her house. He read her desperate words, her fear of forgetting, her determination to keep caring for Ellie even as she lost herself. Tomorrow they'd celebrate her birthday. They'd sing. They'd bring cake and balloons. And whether Martha remembered them or not, they'd be there. Because that's what family does. They show up. Saturday morning, Frank and Ellie drove to Greenfield Assisted Living with a small chocolate cake, blue balloons, and a card Ellie had made. "Remember, sweetheart," Frank said as they walked down the hallway. "If Grandma Martha doesn't recognize us today, that's okay. We're still celebrating her." "I know, Daddy." They reached Martha's room and Frank pushed open the door. Then he stopped cold. 3 people stood around Martha's bed. A tall man with graying temples, a woman in a business suit, a younger man in jeans and a jacket, David, Rebecca, Tom, Martha's children. They all turned when Frank entered. The room crackled with tension. "Mr. Dawson," David said, his voice flat. "We got your letters." Frank's heart pounded. "You came." "We saw the news coverage," Rebecca said, her eyes red-rimmed. "We saw what you said about Mom, about how we abandoned her," Tom finished quietly. Martha sat in her wheelchair by the window. oblivious to the tension, looking at a bird outside. "I didn't write those letters to make you feel guilty," Frank said. "I wrote them because your mother is sick and you deserve to know." David stepped forward, anger in his eyes. "You don't get to judge us. You don't know what our childhood was like, always coming second to the children she babysat, always hearing about how wonderful other people's kids were." "You're right," Frank said softly. "I don't know, but I know she loved you. I found her letters, the ones she wrote but never sent, begging you to call her, telling you she was scared and alone." Rebecca's face crumpled. "She never sent them?" "She forgot. That's how sick she was. She wrote them, addressed them, even put stamps on them, but her mind was already slipping and she'd forget to mail them." "We should have known," Rebecca whispered. "No," Tom said bitterly. "We should have called. We should have visited. But we were angry and selfish and—" His voice broke. "We let our pride matter more than our mother." Ellie had been standing quietly beside Frank, holding the cake. Now she walked past all of them straight to Martha. "Hi, Grandma Martha," she said softly. "Happy birthday." Martha turned, her face blank at first. Then something flickered in her eyes. "Hello, dear. Is it someone's birthday?" "It's your birthday. You're 73 today." "Am I?" Martha smiled vaguely. "How nice." Ellie set the cake down and placed flowers in Martha's lap. "I brought you these, your favorites." Martha touched the flowers gently. "They're beautiful. What's your name, sweetie?" "Ellie." A tear rolled down Ellie's cheek, but she kept smiling. "I'm Ellie, and I love you very much." Then Ellie began to sing, soft and clear. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The room went silent. David, Rebecca, and Tom watched, frozen. "You make me happy when skies are gray." Martha's head tilted. Her clouded eyes focused. Her lips began to move. "You'll never know, dear, how much I love you." And then, impossibly, beautifully, Martha began to sing along. "Please don't take my sunshine away." Her voice was thin and wavering, but she remembered every word. Tears streamed down her face as she sang with Ellie, the song unlocking something deep in her failing mind. When the song ended, Martha looked around the room. Her eyes landed on her children. "David?" Her voice was uncertain. "Rebecca? Tommy?" "Mom!" Rebecca rushed forward, dropping to her knees. "Mom, I'm so sorry!" David and Tom followed, all three of them surrounding their mother, holding her hands, crying. "I thought you'd forgotten me," Martha whispered. "Never," David sobbed. "We were the ones who forgot what mattered, forgot you." Frank took Ellie's hand and quietly stepped toward the door, giving the family privacy. But Martha called out, "Frank, don't go." He turned back. Martha looked at him, lucidity shining in her eyes for this precious moment. "Thank you for taking care of me when my own children couldn't, for loving me when I was lost. You took care of my daughter," Frank said, his voice thick. "You gave her love when I was too broken to. We were taking care of each other all along." Martha smiled, then looked at Ellie. "Come here, my sweet Ellie." Ellie ran to her, and Martha wrapped her in a gentle hug. "You brought my family back to me." Frank watched the reunion, Martha's children apologizing, promising to do better, to be there, and felt something settle in his chest. The battle had never been against the school, or Martha, or even himself. It was against time, against silence, against the distance people build when they're hurting. And while he couldn't win that battle, he could choose to be present for whatever time remained. That was enough. 1 month later, Frank stood in the kitchen making pancakes, actual edible pancakes this time, while Ellie sat at the table doing homework. Sunlight streamed through the windows of their home, which somehow felt warmer now, fuller, even though it was just the two of them. "Daddy, how do you spell responsibility?" Ellie asked. Frank spelled it out while flipping a pancake. "What's the assignment?" "We have to write about someone responsible we know." Ellie looked up, a small smile on her face. "I'm writing about you." Frank's hand stilled on the spatula. "Me?" "Yeah, because you stopped running away. You take care of me now." That's responsible, right? He knelt beside her chair, overwhelmed. Right, that's exactly right. The internal investigation had concluded. Frank had been officially reprimanded and required to attend counseling, but he'd kept his badge. Captain Morrison had reduced his shifts to 8 hours maximum. For your daughter's sake, he'd said gruffly. Frank didn't mind. Those extra 6 hours each day with Ellie were worth more than any overtime pay. Ellie's hair was growing back in soft brown waves. The scarves she wore now were more for fashion than necessity. The alopecia treatment was working. Dr. Chen said within 6 months you'd never know anything had happened. But Frank would always know. He'd always remember what almost happened when he wasn't paying attention. That afternoon was Thursday, visiting day. Frank and Ellie drove to Greenfield Assisted Living with flowers and cookies they'd baked together. Martha's room was brighter now. David had brought photos from her younger years. Rebecca had hung wind chimes by the window. Tom visited every Sunday and read her the newspaper. Her children had come home. Today, Martha sat in her wheelchair looking out at the garden. When Frank and Ellie entered, she turned. "Hello?" she said politely, like they were strangers. Ellie didn't flinch anymore. She'd learned that love didn't require recognition. She simply sat beside Martha and began arranging the flowers in a vase. "These are beautiful," Martha said. "Did you bring them for me?" "Yes, ma'am. I bring them every week." "How kind. What's your name?" "Ellie." "That's a lovely name." Martha smiled warmly, even though she'd asked the same question last visit and the visit before that. Frank watched his daughter patiently explain who she was, tell Martha about her week, share the cookies they'd made. And gradually, Martha relaxed, enjoying the company even if she couldn't quite place who they were. Then Ellie began to sing softly, "You are my sunshine." Something shifted in Martha's face. Not full recognition, but something deeper, a feeling, a warmth, a sense of safety. She didn't sing along today, but she closed her eyes and smiled. After the visit, as they walked to the car, Ellie asked, "Daddy, does it make you sad that Grandma Martha doesn't always remember us?" "Sometimes," Frank admitted. "But then I remember. We're not visiting her so she'll remember us. We're visiting because we remember her. We remember the love she gave you when you needed it most. Even though she made mistakes? Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is we keep showing up anyway." That evening, Frank received an email from Mrs. Callahan. The community fundraiser for Martha's care had raised $15,000, enough to cover her expenses for months, and she'd attached a flyer for a new support group Frank had helped establish. Caregivers United, support for families caring for elderly loved ones. The first meeting was next Tuesday. Frank had volunteered to speak about recognizing early signs of dementia, about the importance of asking for help before crisis hits. He was turning his biggest failure into something meaningful. Ellie appeared in the doorway wearing her pajamas, her growing hair still damp from the bath. "Story time?" "Always," Frank said. He read to her from her favorite book, did the funny voices she loved, and tucked her in. As he turned off the light, Ellie said, "Daddy, I'm not scared anymore." "Scared of what?" "That you'll leave. I know you won't. You promised, and you keep your promises now." Frank kissed her forehead. "Always, baby, always." He stood in her doorway watching her drift off to sleep, this resilient, brave little girl who'd weathered so much. She was healing. Her hair was growing. Her trust was returning. And Frank? He was learning that being present wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, day after day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Outside, the sun set over Ashford Creek. Frank's phone buzzed. A text from David. "Mom had a good day today. She asked about Ellie. Thank you for not giving up on her." Frank smiled and replied, "Family doesn't give up, ever." He walked downstairs, poured himself coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. Tomorrow he'd take Ellie to school. Tomorrow night they'd make dinner together. Thursday they'd visit Martha again. It wasn't a perfect life. Martha's mind would continue fading. There would be hard days ahead. But Frank had learned the most important lesson. The greatest damage doesn't come from what we do. It comes from absence, from silence, from the time we let slip away. Love isn't enough. You have to be present. And for the first time in 4 years, Frank Dawson finally was.